WSWS, 16th of February 2024, battlegrounds for the Indian Ocean's geopolitical conflict are Sri Lanka and the Maldives. China has subsidized renegade politicians to accept bribes and sell her people to the Chinese debt trap as part of her all-out attack against the Indian subcontinent. Amid the rapidly escalating geopolitical tensions between China and the US, two small island nations in the Indian Ocean that are straddling vital east-west maritime routes are Sri Lanka and the Maldives. Colombo, the largest port of Sri Lanka, welcomed the Indian Navy submarine INS Karanj for a two-day tour on February 3. The Navy of Sri Lanka gave it a formal reception. Rear Admiral Saman Perera, the commander of the Western Naval Area of the Sri Lankan Navy, had a visit from Commander Arunabh, the submarine's commanding officer. How the Sri Lankan government handled the Chinese research ship Xiangyang Hong3's recent request to enter the nation starkly contrasted this answer. With India openly opposing the Chinese ship's visit, the Wickremesinghe government declared in January that all research ship trips would be prohibited for a whole year. China claims that in preparation for a war with India, its ship is conducting hydrographic surveys and plotting underwater routes for its submarines. According to New Delhi, it may be monitoring military sites in nearby nations and missiles or satellites being tested from nearby places. We suspect that this vessel, although it is an oceanographic research vessel, is gathering information that China could use to expand its undersea military operations and improve its anti-submarine warfare capabilities as it studies the Indian Ocean environment, the seabed, temperature profile, eddies, currents, etc., stated Abhijit Singh, head of Maritime Policy Initiative at the Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi, to Voice of America on January 29. This implies that China will eventually have a military advantage in the Indian Ocean. In any event, the Chinese ship did not have to wait long to be welcomed elsewhere. The Maldives administration gave the Chinese ship permission to dock there, a blatant insult to India. The choice was made in response to Mohamed Matsu, the newly elected president of the Maldives, declaring that India would have to remove all of its troops by March 15. India maintains a minor military presence in the Maldives and has long considered the country in its strategic backyard. Pro-China Matsu had recently returned from a state visit to Beijing. His declaration shows a change in strategy away from India. The arrival of the Indian submarine to Colombo demonstrates how hard New Delhi is trying to assert its geopolitical hegemony over the Indian Ocean region. The submarine's visit to Colombo was aimed at highlighting India's role as the primary security provider in the Indian Ocean region and sending a message to China's People's Liberation Army Navy, PLA Navy, which has recently increased its activities in the maritime neighborhood of India, according to an announcement made by India's Deccan Herald on February 5. The Hindu Times They confirmed that it marks a diplomatic win for India amid a tiff over China's maritime movement in the Indian Ocean region on the same day. The 2,000-ton conventionally propelled submarine INS Karanj is equipped to perform various tasks, including special operations, anti-submarine warfare, long-range strikes, surface vessel combat, and information collection. It has been customary for Indian naval ships and submarines to make so-called courtesy calls to Sri Lanka. In June last year, another sub, the INS Vijayar, visited Colombo to honor the International Day of Yoga. India has become a frontline state in the U.S. military strategic war against China under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In August of last year, the Modi administration declared that it is collaborating with the Indian military's high command to determine what assistance it will offer the U.S. if Washington launches a conflict with Beijing. Although New Delhi considers the nations of South Asia to be within its traditional area of influence, its geopolitical objectives are beyond the region. New Delhi's standing in the Indian Ocean region was upgraded in the reworked and updated 2015 Indian Maritime Doctrine. New Delhi presently has 2 frontline warships in the Gulf of Aden and at least 10 vessels in the northern and western Arabian Seas, accompanied by a surveillance aircraft, even though it has declined to join the US-led task force battling the Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. Its largest deployment in the area is this one. India is attempting to fully integrate Colombo into its economic, political, and military orbit, partly through its naval trips to Sri Lanka. India is Sri Lanka's most significant economic partner, investor, and source of new visitors. New Delhi has committed to constructing a solar power project, liquefied natural gas infrastructure, a high-capacity power grid link, and a pipeline connecting southern India to Sri Lanka. With a comparable development planned for Kankasantharai in the north, Trincomalee, the strategically significant harbour in eastern Sri Lanka, will be developed into an industrial hub and port with logistical capabilities. During the island nation's extraordinary and ongoing economic crisis, India supported Sri Lanka in obtaining a $4 billion long-term loan from the International Monetary Fund (IMF), and a $3 billion bailout loan. To lower trade barriers for goods and services, plans are also in place for Sri Lanka and India to sign an economic and technical cooperation agreement in March next year. To improve transportation, a passenger ferry service is scheduled to launch at the end of this month, resuming a sea link between India's Nagapattinam and Jaffna's Kankasantharai, following a 40-year lapse. The number of Indian visitors to Sri Lanka is already high. Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar urged Indians to visit Sri Lanka on their next holiday in an apparent attempt to undercut Indian tourism to the Maldives, which is vital to the country's tourism-driven economy. To guarantee that the winner of the upcoming elections will support New Delhi's geopolitical objectives, India is also contacting opposition parties in Sri Lanka, including the JVP and its National People's Power (NPP) parliamentary front. The Modi administration invited a delegation from the JVP/NPP led by Anura Kumar Dissanayake to come for 5 official days at the beginning of this month. The Sri Lankan government declared it would send ships to support Washington's Operation Prosperity Guardian in the Red Sea against the Houthi group in Yemen just a few days after forbidding the entry of a Chinese vessel. Beijing has taken steps to deepen its strategic ties with the Maldives in reaction to US-led and Indian attempts to challenge Chinese influence and entwine Sri Lanka with them. President Mohamed Mutsu received a sumptuous red carpet greeting when he traveled to China. During the administration of former Maldivian President Abdullah Yameen, an agreement was struck for the construction of an ocean observatory on Majanjadho in the Maldives, to be jointly maintained by China's State Oceanic Administration and the Maldives Ministry of Environment and Energy. However, the idea was abandoned after his September 2018 defeat. India is now worried that Mutsu may bring the contract back. Beijing maintains that the observatory's primary goals would be ocean observation and research. Still, New Delhi asserts that Beijing will have access to an essential area of the Indian Ocean for strategic and commercial shipping. Now that the deadline for the pullout of Indian troops is approaching, tensions are growing. Chief Admiral R. Hari Kumar of the Indian Navy informed CNN News 18 on January 25 that, contrary to Mail's request, the Indian government had not issued an order directing its defence personnel to depart the Maldives. "We are awaiting directives, regardless of the outcome," Kumar stated. The US and India are committed to limiting Chinese influence in Mail. After President Mahinda Rajapaksa's government brought Sri Lanka closer to China, New Delhi supported Washington's effort to overthrow the previous government and install the Sirisena Wickremesinghe administration in the 2015 presidential election. If required, New Delhi and Washington will carry out a similar operation to overthrow the newly elected Mutsu government.